That's a weird dip right there, but that actually might be the center.
Eye. Yeah.
The eye getting really close, and then it jumps back up a little more as the storm pulls away, and then it really goes down tomorrow.
And that's why we talked about, too, though, that where you get a temporary calm in the eye, that southern side, it might not be as wet, it might not be as rainy, but still windy. It's still a pressure system, and on the southern side, even if that's a dry side, you could still have some gusts over 50.
Now we'll switch to Baton Rouge. There's our tower cam right now, and it's a dreary scene. Sustained winds in Baton Rouge at 21 miles per hour. Likely if you higher gusts on top of that, and that would likely rise as we go through the night. 76 the current air temperature with showers around. This is the Baton Rouge wind trend. Lower than what we expect near the coast because, as you mentioned earlier, we expect a rapid weekend. It looks like we got some new data in there jumping those numbers up a little bit more. But at the very least, tropical storm force wind gusts upwards of 50, maybe 60 miles per hour in the metro.
And that continues through about midnight, again, because while we might deal with the heaviest action prior to midnight from a rain perspective, even as that storm pulls away on the southern and western side, we'll still have some gusty winds. So it's not until about daybreak tomorrow continue to bring up that crucial 30-mile-per-hour mark where the linesmen and the power crews can get out there and get the bucket trucks up and whatnot and get to work. Need to be under 30, and we should have sustained under 30 through most of the daylight hours tomorrow. So crews should be able to get to work pretty quickly.
I'm going to pull up the current map of wind speeds and wind gusts. That way we can actually get the instantaneous burst of wind there. Morgan City, that was up to 62 with the last observation, but now showing a 54-mile-per-hour gust there. Baton Rouge gusting up to 33, Gonzales up to 32. New Orleans, a little bit farther east of the center of circulation, they have a gust of 41 sustained at 26.
Yeah, and I said that. I wouldn't be shocked if we see some higher wind reports in New Orleans as compared to, say, New Roads, for instance. Well, New Roads may technically end up closer to the storm center than New Orleans. New Orleans is going to be in that eastern side, as I like Emma Kate's term, the dirty side of the storm. It's a little bit more active.
So this is a new update from the National Hurricane Center. Still almost a certainty of at least seeing tropical storm force winds in the metro area, especially points east. In fact, those probabilities have climbed with the latest Hurricane Center forecast for New Orleans, maybe decreased a little bit. I mean, you see that 90% chance in New Roads, and it quickly drops off west of Point Capee Parish.
So to remind you what this means, that's the chance of a 39-mile-per-hour sustained wind for 1 minute or more. It needs to be 1 minute. So you'll see that at least once. And that's all it takes to do a little bit of structural and tree damage, especially to power lines that are weaker, especially to trees that are weaker or weakened by the drought and the rain from the last couple of weeks then that made the ground saturated. So it's not like you're going to experience this from, say, 5 to midnight constantly. That's not what the 100% means. It means at some point in that window, you will see wind over 39 miles per hour.
And shifting gears now and talking about the rain, we did see a little nudge east in the track with the 4 o'clock advisory. I'm not surprised to see that. Most of the computer model guidance shows a track somewhere between the Baton Rouge Metro and Lake Pontchartrain. And I think along and east of that track, that's where you'll see the highest axis of heavy rain. As a baseline, 3 to 6 inches is possible, but along that track, maybe just northwest of the track, that's where we could see some locally higher amounts.
I want to point out something really important on this map, and we're probably going to see some adjustments to another aspect of the forecast because of it. That's the river levels. Where are most of our river level basins? Comey, northern East Baton Rouge Parish. Amite, through parts of East Feliciana, St. Helena, northern Livingston Parish, rain totals have come down. Tickfall, also in this vicinity, rain totals have come down. Where they remain high? The Tangipahoa River Basin and those rivers to the east of our viewing area, getting closer to the Pearl River. But all of these heaviest amounts generally fall over areas that don't have major drainage channels. There could be some standing water issues, some bayous, some creeks that come up. But our key metro area rivers, the drainage basins are also the north that are now in an area that sees a lower rainfall total than we were even expecting 6 hours ago. Thanks to that's why we say those small 20, 30 mile per hour wiggles in track means so much to so many aspects of the forecast. Imagine that 3 days in advance might have been off by 30, 40 miles. But when we get into the daytime of the storm, these little wiggles are fascinating to watch through the day because they do have wide-reaching impacts. So we'll keep an eye, but I'll bet when our next river forecasts come out, those levels, which are already primarily expected to be below flood stage, will stay that way or even go lower.
Right, and I think after the event, too, those river flood forecasts get much more accurate.
Yeah, that's right, they will. I think Chris told me, we'll leave this up here, but they have some video we could talk over. You guys can take that whenever. Malcolm and I will take a look. If you want to tell me what we're seeing when you bring it up, we'll certainly have a look there. I see, oh, okay, we're seeing from Dulac, Terrebonne Parish. Okay, so this is just to the east of where we saw meteorologist Balin Rogers in Morgan City, and southeast of where we were finding Alexis Maroney in Labadyville. That's pretty intense, and that goes to show you, Malcolm, I think that speaks to, think of the safe spot Balin got himself into, in a parking lot near a sturdy building. That is very not.
It's so easy to underestimate the power of water.
Yeah.
And the wind just exerts that drag on the water and just pushes it. That's why storm surge is one of the deadliest part of hurricanes, is because sometimes it's easy to misjudge just how powerful rushing water can be.
Yeah, I mean, this is hurricanes, tropical storms, they are a coastal event. And that is clearly an exposed coastal area with rushing water. It's why you're often urged to leave those locations when a tropical system's coming in. Again, to what we were saying about Balin, he moved away from water. He moved further in, it's not far, but farther inland in Morgan City, surrounding himself by sturdy structures to protect himself from the wind and any large bodies of water that could quickly inundate his area.
He didn't even want to leave the levee protected area, and that is the reason why.
Right, and that says something, because we know Balin as a daredevil storm chaser, but he knows when not to mess with the weather, and today was one of those days, and that video from Dulac kind of shows that. We get back to the forecast now, and we're taking a look at satellite. Malcolm, I know you've got plenty to say about this, but we've seen such a transformation in the last 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, it's interesting. What these color contours represent are the temperature of the cloud tops way up high in the sky, and the colder the cloud tops, the higher they're getting, the stronger the thunderstorms. And we see a lot of these reds earlier on this morning, and then they began to weaken. And we thought, okay, is this the beginning of the end for this storm? Is it going to continue to weaken? And I don't know if you noticed this here, but that explosion of convection and thunderstorm activity right on shore. And at first we were trying to figure out, why is that happening? Because you would think once it interacts with land, it should weaken. But I think there might be some frictional convergence right along the coast that might spark some more of that thunderstorm activity.
So what Malcolm basically saying there, to take that term in another way, is that you see these winds rushing inland, they're hitting land, and it's forcing them to go somewhere, and that's rising. And the rising motion generates new shower and storm activity. Because if you talked about friction in some ways harming the storm, look at the early going while the center was still offshore. We had a pretty healthy, cold cloud tops here and immediately fall apart upon hitting land. But it's that central circulation is where we're seeing that blow up of new convection.
And maybe that blow up of convection is an indicator of why we saw that 100-mile-per-hour jump in winds.
Yeah.
Or, excuse me, 10-mile-per-hour jump in winds to 100 miles per hour.
And the northeast motion, we've seen, I like that we have the track on here, because you can see really, we had this nice beeline northeast over the last 24 hours. But there have been some distinct wiggles here in the last 12 hours or so.
And we do eventually expect a northward turn to this as this begins to interact with an upper level disturbance, which is actually sitting way over here. That should eventually pivot this off towards the north. So while it may move northeast for the next couple of hours, then it may make a northward turn, maybe up towards, let's say, the Florida parishes out into Mississippi.
Yeah, and even paralleling I-55 at some point later on this evening. We'll have to keep an eye on that. One of the big factors that's been working against this system, we've talked about wind shear, now friction because we're getting close to landfall, and it's the dry air that's working on this system from the west. And I don't doubt, we've been talking about the dry air coming on the southern side, wrapping into the storm center, eroding it from within, but I don't doubt that this dry air also hitting the southwest, coming in from the southwest, hitting the northern side of the storm is why you've probably seen on some of our radar images and noticed, especially north and west of Baton Rouge, some of that rain activity is really starting to dry up and struggle right now. So this is going to be a very lopsided event in terms of impacts and the presentation on radar. And Malcolm's going back to that right now. We have a landfall?
Yes, we do have a landfall. Francine has made landfall in southern Louisiana in the Parish of Terrebonne, about 30 miles south-southwest of Morgan City, as a Category 2 hurricane. Maximum sustained winds are estimated near 100 miles per hour. A station located on Eugene Island recently reported a wind gust of 105 miles per hour with a minimum pressure at 976
You said
millibars.
south-southwest of Morgan City, so they're calling the landfall right about on that point there, part of Terrebonne Parish.
Which
that'd be south-southwest.
It's hard to see exactly where that center circulation is because we don't have a closed eye wall there, but clearly that center moving over land right now, continuing north.
So if that's center, and we know we have a northeastern movement, I'll just draw with my hand here. We are going to take, so that where that estimated wind speed of 100 miles per hour was, I mean, stand by Balin and Alexis. Stand by Morgan City, Amelia, Supreme, Labadyville. those strongest wind gusts in the southern part of, the southern part of the inner eye wall here and the core of this storm, they're heading right for you, moving to the northeast at about 17 miles per hour.
We should also have a track update as well. I'm going to pull that up here. There's the 5 o'clock advisory, still peak winds at 100 miles per hour. Zoom in just a little bit closer there. The radar is still, this is the current live radar. You can see very heavy rain over parts of western St. Mary, Assumption Parish, moving north into St. James, Assumption Parish before too long in the track between Lake Pontchartrain and Baton Rouge.
Where it was all along yesterday.
That's right.
We had that bizarre shift earlier. I want to make a really important point here. This cone is really tiny. That's because the storm is initializing right here now. It's always wider, farther out in space and time. And with this cone being really tiny, you go, Baton Rouge, they're on the western side of that cone now. It might miss us. It will not miss you. The cone is where the center will go, not where impacts will be felt. Impacts will be felt to the west and much more so to the east. So everything remains on track from a forecast perspective. This is projecting exactly where that center will go, which is through Assumption. It looks like St. James, and then into eventually central Livingston Parish.
I think we should emphasize as well, we often talk about the east side of the storm being the dirty side. The west side is not the clean side, though. I mean, if the center circulation tracks, let's say, through Ascension and Livingston Parish, Baton Rouge is still just miles away from the center, and you're going to see northwesterly winds whipping on the back side. Maybe slightly lower than what you see on the east side, but it is still going to be strong, still could do some damage.
Yeah, I think maybe a good way, it's the eastern side could have slightly stronger winds, and they will sprawl out farther to the east on the eastern side of the storm. So the tropical wind extent will go less further out on the western side than it will on the eastern side. That's really the main difference there. But yeah, just because you're immediately west of center doesn't mean you're off scot-free.
Well, that's the latest track update from the National Hurricane Center. We will get another update in an hour per their statement. 6 o'clock, we should get another position update as well as a track update.
So with all that being said, what I'll say is Malcolm and I are about to step off set here. We're going to go update this with that landfall information. We're going to make sure that gets pushed out on this if you're following along with the Storm Station weather app. Our on-air updates will continue, and those new advisories, likely the landfall advisory, you've probably already seen it. That comes out on our WBRZ Weather X and Facebook platform. So that's kind of the wrap right now. We're not going anywhere. We've got plenty more to talk about, analyzing the storm as it gets closer to Baton Rouge, and we have way more in the field from our live crews sprawled all about southeastern Louisiana. We are going to take a quick break. We continue tracking Francine after this.